tax evasion is a crime. It's a serious crime. The objective of the conversations is to take our clients, to take our staff closer to the crimes that all too often generate the funds and the assets that we may be processing through our firms, and therefore to help us to make better decisions, to get perhaps better outcomes.
It is possible that people see a large amount of tax evasion, particularly among the wealthiest individuals and the biggest corporations, and think, well, if they're getting away with it, can't we? Why shouldn't I do it?
I think we're seeing governments becoming increasingly wise and savvy as to what certain people are doing offshore. We're seeing and hearing more governments exchanging information. We're also seeing governments showing themselves to be more willing to call nonsense where nonsense exists. The fact that we talk about Panama Papers or the British Virgin Islands rarely, if ever, means that money is actually located there. What we see is the use of these palm tree jurisdictions as conduits through which money ultimately ends up in quote-unquote more legitimate places, usually London.
It really remains to be seen what happens post-Brexit. We do know that the UK is responsible for a dozen or so tax havens, overseas territories, and that they're vulnerable post-Brexit. In which case, how does the UK respond to that? It may have to make them even more attractive to money from other places.
If we are going to decide that it should be illegal, then it should be a worldwide thing and it should be a G20 thing, because we'll shut down and everybody else will carry on.
Based on what I've seen in years of reading the Panama Papers, the Paradise Papers and other documents, there's nearly always a compliance practitioner who is at the heart of what business decision the company ultimately makes about who it does business with and what kind of business it lets through its doors.
Financial institutions need to keep up to date with all the publicly available resources there are. That's not always an easy job. But also they need to be suspicious of those structures. They need to be a bit more proactive and ask questions.
There's a lot of work that needs to be done, but I would say that there does seem to be significant activity where governments are exchanging information about transparent structures, about jurisdictions that might otherwise or previously, even a few years ago, have been more secretive.
Transparency was one of the themes that really came out of this evening's event. Everybody, whoever it is, does understand that if we don't know what's going on, we have no idea of how big this problem is. And if we don't know who to trust, then instinctively most of us will trust nobody, because we think they're all trying to get something for nothing and they're trying to avoid or evade tax.
These particular events, I think, are important because they bring a different perspective versus other industry events. These Thomson Reuters events give a fresh journalistic perspective on the challenges, on the problems, and what some of the solutions might be.
There's a new ethic descending upon the industry, in some cases reasonably successfully, in others clearly not. Today's session captured the flavour of that.
There were all sorts of different subjects, but we had great expertise, obviously, on the Paradise and Panama Papers from the other speakers, so I learned a lot today.